absolutely welcome back to South Africa and South African Prepper. So the last 3 months we've had 3 different events happening in Southern Africa that made us as a community raise our awareness firstly, and then secondly it made us prepare even better. The reality is that a lot of people watching this channel and other prepping channels do prepare for a Shtf scenario or some sort of a collapse or maybe a natural disaster. But the reality is that we actually learned the last 3 months or 3 events is that you can prepare as best you can. And you can go for training like we do, and you can practice certain things until you're blue in the face, but when it comes to the day that you need to implement what you've been preparing for, what you've practiced might not happen or occur as you have practiced. So it is extremely important to analyze what happens in your area. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, and combining that with the fact that you have been practicing in your community and your prepping community will allow you then to literally be flexible on the day that the shit hits the fan. So the 3 things that happened in Southern Africa the last 3 months, sorry, the dogs are running around and playing here. So the 3 things that happened, and we're going to quickly summarize them, and I'll explain to you the lessons that we learned from them. So the first one was the situation in northern Mozambique, where, let's call them terrorists for the sake of YouTube. These vigilantes actually attacked a specific town, and in this town there were a lot of contract workers that did work for a big oil company. What happened was they were forced into a hotel, and then they were surrounded, and out of desperate action they actually had to jump into their vehicles. They had to form a convoy, and then they literally had to try and flee from this area in order to actually stay alive. Now in this specific report, some of the vehicles never made it out, and the vehicles that did make it out had a whole lot of casualties. The one story I remember is the one vehicle the guy was driving and he got shot. He kept on driving, and then afterwards, once they got to safety, this guy actually passed away, which is very sad. So what can we learn from this specific thing? The first thing is that you need self-defense. Now this specific situation, they had no boomsticks and they had no way of defending themselves. The second thing that we learned from this is that although you are practicing convoys, there is still a danger that your convoy will be attacked. And then the third thing is that although you think that bugging in is an option, that bugging out should always be a plan B, because when things do get too hot, you do need a strategy to actually get out. Right, now the second scenario happened in Swaziland. There was civil unrest in Swaziland, and the government of Swaziland then decided to shut off all of the communication. So all of the internet, all of the cell phone towers were switched off, which means those people could literally not communicate, and this is where radio communication comes in. And I'll be honest with you, we as a prepping community, that's one of our big focuses, is radio communication, because once the power goes off or the internet is being switched off like in Swaziland, your cell phone actually doesn't work. So that's the second scenario and the second lesson that we learned. And then the last thing that happened was about 3 weeks ago in Durban, where, well, most of the world knows about it, and people on this channel will know about it as well, is when mass looting and burning took place. And in that specific scenario we learned a couple of things. The first thing that we learned was that the government will not come to your rescue, and this was actually proven in Durban 3 weeks ago, because the army only rocked up 2 or 3 days later, and then they claimed that they actually stabilized the situation. But in actual fact, what happened was that the community were the heroes. The community banded together, and the community actually protected certain areas or blocks or neighborhoods, and that actually inspired a lot of communities across South Africa to do exactly the same in an attempt to actually stop burning and looting going to their neighborhoods. And this was a very, very big deterrent. And I think, and I know, because of that fact, that whole situation was then stopped in its tracks because these looters and burners realized that the communities are standing up and they will not tolerate this. The second lesson we learned from Durban was that within 3 to 4 days, that specific affected area ran out of petrol and diesel and then food as well. So we learned that you need to be prepared. You need to have a certain amount of everything in order for you to survive a short term, in the case of Durban scenario, where fuel was in short supply and food was in short supply. And then the last thing we learned from Durban was that at a certain stage, we've got family and friends down that side, and they actually phoned us and said, listen, we need your help. And at that stage, that same thing is actually started spilling over in our area as well. And I said to them, listen, we had to make a decision. Do we drive down 400 kilometers and we go and help them, and we leave our own people behind, our own families behind? Because at that stage it was flaring up this side as well. And we decided, and it was an extremely hard decision to make, was not to go and help them because we were scared of the same thing happening in our area. So at the end of the day, you need to be self-reliant. You need to be making sure that in your area you can actually sustain and look after yourself firstly. You cannot rely on other people. And the ironic thing about this is family and friends of mine that we've been warning for many, many years, and suddenly they needed our help because they know that we are in this prepping community and we are in security as well. And suddenly they came begging for help. So that is the lessons that we've learned from these 3 specific events that we've actually physically seen in the last 3 months in South Africa. Please like, share and subscribe, and thank you for watching our channel.